Welcome back to the 2 Months Hockey Podcast, presented by Boston Pizza South Common. I am your host, Joshua Marshall, and we have a great guest in the waiting on a great Monday night here in Edmonton, and he is in Boston. We're not going to name where the hotel he is at obviously, but we have the host of Oilers Now, and he is the color analyst on Rogers Sportsnet with Gene Principe, Jason Strudwick, and the other great guests that they always have joining him. We have Bob Stauffer from Oilers Now. Bob, how's it going?
Good, Josh. How are you? You're back in town after working for a couple weeks, eh?
Yeah. I was away for 14 days. First time I missed Christmas, and first time I missed New Year's. So I don't think I'd ever do it again. But it
You
was
you were grinding. That's what you
grinding
got
and
to do, man. Got to
grinding,
grind.
grinding. Made a lot of money, and yeah, we're on a pretty cool project out in Kitimat, British Columbia for LNG Canada, and interesting enough, Pierre Polyev has been to that site 3 different times, and the guy that resigned today has never been there at all. So a little political nudge
Well,
there.
our team is called the Edmonton Oilers, or the show's called Oilers Now, and I support oil and gas. It doesn't mean that you can't support things that are center left,
Yep.
with rights for certain groups and that sort of thing. They're not mutually exclusive, and we'll see what happens carrying forward. I think it's going to be a very interesting next 6 to 9 months in this country.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Speaking of our country stuff, well, before we get to any Oilers stuff and some other NHL news and notes, but let's get to our World Juniors report and our junior report sponsored by Sheena Boychuk Realty. Realty by Design, your design approach to real estate. That is Johnny Boychuk's significant other. So thanks for her for joining us on the podcast here as a sponsor. Your thoughts on I guess let's go to Team Canada first, and your thoughts of what happened. Obviously, great win by the U.S. again, but your initial thoughts on what Dave Cameron and and what the selection team looked like. I know you're kind of hinting or talking about Jeff O'Neill kind of said something good, but the floor is yours, stuff, and what we saw from Team Canada.
Well, first of all, this is not revisionist history. Like we talked about this in the first week of December on Oilers Now. I had concerns about who was not on initially invited. I wasn't quite sure how you couldn't invite a third overall, seventh overall, and eighth overall pick into Team Canada. If I was, Anaheim with Seneke or Calgary with Yakimchuk or sorry, Calgary with Parekh or the Calgary Hitmen's Yakimchuk who's with Ottawa. I'd have those questions too. Like I was surprised those guys didn't get invited. I've had lots of conversations about this with AJ Jackbick. He did the play-by-play of the World Juniors. Canada had 23 first-round picks that, in theory, could have played in the tournament. That does not include Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini, who were the number one overall picks the last 2 years that are playing in the NHL. Nor does it, I guess, include Zach Benson,
Mm-hmm.
uh, who I saw in the Holinka Gretzky a couple of years ago, or Caden Lindstrom, who's injured out right now with Medicine Hat, or Ginla, who's not playing as well. So they still had 23 first rounders at their disposal. They only took 10. And it seemed to me like I'm not going to criticize the kids that went. I'm going to criticize the selection process. I'm a big believer in a degree of meritocracy, but I also think don't overthink it. Like it kind of looked to me like Hockey Canada had some people on the scouting side that thought they were smarter than NHL organizations.
Yeah.
And based upon Canada's inability to score goals, it appeared as though they were short on skill. Simply put, Josh, in my opinion, um, the problem isn't hockey in Canada. The problem is Hockey Canada.
Yeah.
That's how I saw this. Now, Dave Cameron as a coach, problematic for me. 2011 World Juniors, Canada had a really good team. Braden Shen was the best player in that tournament by far. Canada was up 3-0 in the gold medal game against the Russians. Russia had talent. They had guys like Panarin on that team, and they stormed back uh, and made it 3-3. And Dave called a timeout. And being the adult in the room, I thought he'd settle his team down, and that's not what happened. Anybody that saw the video of the bench conversation, it was I was to me, I was surprised he ever got another opportunity to coach Team Canada after that. Now he was a fill-in when the Bear Andre Turigi got hired by Arizona a couple years ago. And in fairness to Dave, he ultimately won in Edmonton. That was the year that McTavish pulled the puck out of the net. Kent Johnson scored the golden goal for
Yeah.
Canada. But this year's team, they made some odd selections. They handcuffed themselves. That's a term we use in fantasy football. Uh, they didn't handcuff themselves. And a handcuff is when you have a starting quarterback on a really good team, you make sure you have the backup in case the starter gets hurt. Or maybe a better example might be, a starting running back that's one of the top five running backs. You make sure you have his backup in case there's a significant injury to that guy to do a similar type job. And I was stunned. I mean, Matt Schaefer scored 3 goals as a 20-year-old or as a 18-year-old, 16-year-old, 3 goals as a 16-year-old in major junior. And he was the guy sort of that they were really, you know, wanting a lot of offensively. And then they had Oliver Bonk, who's not the driver on the first unit power play, you know, playing ahead of a kid that was in the first unit power play in London with the Knights. Sam Dickinson. There was some really befuddling moves. And when you don't achieve success, that lends itself to criticism. So they have to take it. So bottom line here, I think that you know, at the end of the day, Peter Anhold, who runs Lethbridge, and Al Murray, they talked afterwards that they were comfortable with the team they took. Well, I'm sorry, you didn't take the best available players. And we are not in a position where we can't take our best available players because our best is pretty good. No other country, Josh, had 23 first round picks available to them.
Yeah.
I think the Americans took 7 of the 8 available to them. So that's my perspective. I'm not blaming the kids. I'm not surprised there's challenges with discipline at times because I don't frankly think the IIHF officiating is up to the standard that it should be. Um, I think at times Canada's earned a somewhat unfounded reputation over the last decade of being physically tough teams. I don't think we play that way anymore. Um, but we do have skill, and I just don't think we chose skill on our team. And in the end, it undermined success in the tournament.
Yeah.
Now, specific to Jeff O'Neill, I watched with quite a bit of interest the TSN coverage after Canada lost. It's a difficult situation. I worked for the Oilers Entertainment Group when the Oilers were not good. They had 2 stints where they won 1 out of 21 games. Uh, to me, if you're super critical of a team, the players on the ice at that time, it's sort of it's completely unnecessary because you don't have the horsepower.
Yeah.
But the guys that are getting paid, like in the NHL, players get paid. In the World Juniors, the kids aren't getting paid, but the GM's getting paid and the coaches are getting paid. And I thought Jeff O'Neill did a terrific job post game addressing hard issues in a difficult scenario. I know there were a couple other pundits that were worried about the kids. Well, I don't know. Actually, I think most people didn't really go after. I mean, maybe they went after Easton Cowan a little bit because of the Maple Leaf angle and it was in Ottawa. And that was not a positive thing to happen as a result of that tournament. But I thought Jeff did a terrific job of sort of straddling the line between being a rights holder but being brutally honest. And I would suggest to you, I look at the situation Edmonton's in now. My expectations today are far greater out of the Oilers than they were in 10-11 when Edmonton was going through a real difficult time, right? Like we just simply have better players. There should be an expectation that this team should have a degree of success. And with that comes, frankly, a little bit more critical eye. And I thought Jeff did a real good job of getting that point across and on the broadcast.
Yeah. And I think he's an amazing person and an analyst like yourself. And, he's a recent guest on this podcast too. And someone if I need to, run something by, he's good to give a good breakdown on it. And,
Lost a lot of weight, eh?
he has. Maybe you need to get on that diet and
Yeah.
get in that situation too. But he has lost a lot of weight, and he just honestly, he's one of the great guys out there, and that's one thing I like about him is it just his opinion is just honest, and it was
Yeah,
interesting.
no, he did it. Yeah, he did a
Yeah,
great job.
he did for sure. It was interesting because on November 19th, I was in Calgary covering the Flames game. They were playing the Islanders, and there was to my left there was someone pretty high up from Hockey Canada sitting to my left, and then to my second left, the person over was a someone that I think should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And it was just very interesting to hear the conversation that was happening as names and players and whatnot were being talked about. And I know when that Hockey Canada person left, there was a conversation with me and another person that was there in that conversation, and we were kind of questioning what was going on at that point of the selection. And then obviously,
Yeah.
a few weeks later, they came out with the selection, the pre-tournament roster where the selection camp was going to be made, and there was a lot of players left off that list. So it was interesting. And hey, I was there a couple weeks later, and Steve Stales I liked what Steve Stales did. I know he was with the Oilers organization, but Carter Yakimchuk followed him throughout that whole day at the morning skate, the Flames and Senators morning
Yeah.
skate, and I got to reconnect with Travis Hamonic. But I just really like that Steve took time to bring Carter back to the rink. Obviously, he's playing for the Hitmen. They were just off for their Christmas break, and Carter was around the Sens players, so that he's got a bright future. That kid, and what a goal he scored in preseason against the Toronto Maple Leafs too. So, but yeah, very well said on that stuff. I don't think we need to add any more. I think it was pretty cool to see USA and what they've been able to do. Do you want to do a quick rip on what USA Hockey's been able to do here?
Well, they've specialized, but let's not forget if we're talking best on best 19s and under, like
Yeah,
Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini are playing in the NHL, and they're the two biggest young stars in the game under the age of 21.
yeah,
So, and I look at Gavin McKenna, and I don't think he was put in a position to succeed by Dave Cameron. I know people that think he's a bit like Kucherov in terms of very subtle in his offensive approach, and everybody's talking about Landon Dupont in 2027. Well, I'm going to give you a name of a kid in 2026,
Keaton
Keaton
Verhoff.
Verhoff.
Yeah,
He's got 14 goals this year as a 16-year-old defenseman, and he just got moved to the first unit power play after Christmas. Like, that's a 6'4" right shot defenseman. He's probably got a higher ceiling than Aaron Ekblad. So, we could have five of the top eight picks in the 2026 draft out of the West. There is a lot of skill. It's different now. Yes, it costs more money to play, but there's way more skill development out West than ever before, and I think we're starting to see it. So again, I'm not worried about where we're at as a country. I mean, the U.S. has a real good system, and but they haven't lost, top end number one overall picks that were eligible for that tournament year after year. And so if Canada just picked the best kids and we lost, well, maybe we're having a conversation, but I don't think that occurred.
yeah,
So, and I watched a lot of the NHL Network, which tends to be really American focused down here. And that's just the way it works. Yesterday, the Americans deserved to win that game against Finland. Finland hung around, but the Americans were all over them. They outshot them 2-1. But Canada beat Finland 4-0 in the round robin.
yep,
So I might argue to you that Finland probably is the fourth best team there. I'd have liked to have seen, in spite of the fact that I didn't like the makeup of Canada's team, I'd like to have seen them get another crack at the Americans because they did outplay them 5v5 in that game. But Canada didn't take care of business themselves and put themselves in a bad spot. And the Czechs had some size and talent on the wings. If anything, what surprised me is Canada kind of picked smaller, less skilled guys,
yeah,
that were kind of second and third round draft. I didn't get it.
yeah,
And so, the Americans have won twice and Canada's crashed out, in the final, whatever round or whatever, the last 2 years. I still think we're in really good shape, best on best, when we got access to everybody.
yeah.
And I don't think we'll make the same mistake next year with our World Junior team in the tournament that's in the States.
Yeah, yeah. I think Pierre McGuire was on Jeff Merrick's show today, and he just said Hockey Canada needs to get out of the political game and get back into the hockey game. That was kind
Well,
of
it's political behind the scenes. They're worried about I personally, from what I understand,
financially they were concerned too. Like they wanted to get, like they lost all that sponsorship, and they did come back,
They
But
got some of that back.
yeah,
Yeah. They just, you know what? Just pick the best kids,
yeah,
the
exactly.
best players.
100%. Let's move over to our Oilers report, sponsored by our friends at Shadified Salon and Barbershop. They got the 3 locations in Edmonton. I'll be going there tomorrow to get all freshened up because it's been about 3 weeks.
I've been to 2 locations. I've been to a location on the north side and the location on the south side.
Yeah, they missed you there. They ask about you all the time. Stuff. I just put out a little tweet and a tease saying that you're going to be on the podcast tomorrow. You are the popular guest we have on here.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Exactly, and the family, and the great people at Shadified like you and support you. So hopefully you get a chance to get back there whenever you get an opportunity. I know you're a busy man, and there's a lot of people that want to make this stuff look like $1 million. So
And it's hard to do, let me tell you.
it's pretty easy to do. You're a stud.
Not as handsome as I used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting old.
Exactly. Anyways,
All right, let's get on the Oilers.
exactly.
Todd.
Oilers. Okay. Turnaround. The turnaround. I know there was a slow start. I know earlier in the year you were very bullish on Chris Knobloch because he has the history of his team starting off really well. But obviously this team had a little bit of a slow start, and they're right where everyone thought they would be. What has been the key to this turnaround for you, Staff?
Well, I believe that this turnaround was coming. Uh, you know, it's Chris has had good starts to the year, but he didn't lose in the 7th game of a Stanley Cup final. Like, I think that just trying to ratchet that back up. The Oilers have a lot of really good players. They have a mature team. Uh, they have a couple fantastic, top 5 players in the world. And then they've added some high character people like Zach Hyman and at forward and Matthias Ekholm on defense to go along with like Nugent Hopkins and Darnell Nurse that support Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So they have a really good base. Um, they didn't get some saves early in the year. They weren't killing penalties. At one point, teams had scored on all 5 shots they'd taken on the Oilers on PK. And I'm just looking at it here. Over the last 24 games, the Oilers have killed 52 shorthanded situations. So that's over 90%. During this 18-game stretch since November the 23rd, Edmonton's 14-3-1. That's the second best points percentage in the NHL at 8. The only team that's better than them is Vegas, and Vegas got a 1-0 win at home in a game in which Edmonton outshot them 28-16, including 16-2 in the third. So that game could have gotten. Vegas has got a real good team. They're a well-run organization. So Edmonton's second in points percentage to Vegas. They're number 1 in goals for per game since November 23rd. They're number 3 in goals against per game. They're number 2 in the power play. They're number 4 in the penalty kill, and they're number 4 in expected goals for. So pick a key stat. They're scoring. They're getting stops. They've got territorial play at 5v5, and their special teams are good. So, they're ramping up here. Do I think they're a finished product? No. Do I have some confidence that they're going to continue to play well? I do, because they've basically been, I don't know if you know this, Josh, but over the last 4 seasons, the Oilers have been a 700 team in the second half of the season. So I don't think they quite got to 700 last year. I think they went from like 645 to 685, but they've been a good second half team the last 4 years. And I think they got a solid squad. I don't think they're perfect. I don't think there's any perfect teams in the NHL. I think teams are built differently. Florida's got some heaviness and size and aggression in their bottom 6. So does Vegas. Edmonton and Colorado have a little bit more skill.
Yeah.
And you look at, I think, and Jack Michaels brought this up today in our podcast, like Colorado and Edmonton are somewhat similar. Both had some issues with saves early in the years. They had more injuries than Edmonton did at forward. Both teams are driven by 2-star forwards. I might assert to you that, Cale Makar is kind of on a level by himself, but Bouchard's a guy last year in the playoffs who played Quinn Hughes. I think Quinn was probably hurt, because I think Quinn Hughes is Vancouver's best player. But you said it. They're 24-12-3. Like, 39 games. So they got 2 games until the halfway point of the season. If I told you that they'd have 25 wins at the halfway point of the season, that's 50 wins on the year. I think you probably said, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I'd say, yeah, they're kind of where we thought they'd get there. little bit more dependent on Leon and Connor and maybe not quite the secondary scoring that I thought they were going to get. But again, and certainly a different team than last year's team and a lot different team than the team 2 years ago.
Yeah, I really like. And I said this to Gene. Gene was on with us about a couple of weeks ago, and I said I like the way Darnell Nurse has been playing, and it was
Yeah.
unfortunate that he got that hit from Ryan Reeves, but I'm glad it didn't sustain him to be out of the lineup for a month or so. But he's pretty much picked up where he left off in terms of like he was playing good up to that injury, and he's continued to play good past that injury and coming back. What's your thoughts on Nerds? I know very polarizing, and you know,
Oh,
some fans love him, some fans want to pile on. I know it's all about the everyone likes to look at the contract, but I think what he's been able to do in solidifying, because yes, at times Ekholm and Bouchard haven't been what we thought they've been the last couple of years. But you put out that tweet. I think it's what is Ekholm? I think it was a couple of weeks ago. At 133 games, he's a plus 84. Like he's been
yeah,
really,
he's plus 86 as an Oiler.
yeah. So
Like it's yeah. Well, I'll tell you exactly. Like you look at Nurse and like Kulak's now playing over 20 minutes a game. He turned 31 today. For defense pairings that have played over 200 minutes this year, Nurse and Kulak are fifth in expected goals for, right around 60%. And Ekholm and Bouchard are next. They're sixth at 59, like nine. So the Oilers basically have two of the top six defense pairings in the league based on the possession metrics. Now, that's playing Kulak half the time at right D, right? That's when he's with Nurse. So I think Brett's probably been a little bit of a surprise. Darnell's bounced back. He had, I don't know, a tough period and a half in LA and Anaheim coming out of a break. He'd probably be the first to admit he would have liked to have had some, I mean, an unbelievable stretch pass in the game against Anaheim when it was 2-0. And if Connor McDavid scores in that breakaway, that game maybe goes a different way. But you know what? Ekholm's plus 14, Nurse's plus 8, Kulak's plus 5. Those are your three left shot D. When you got those numbers at halfway through the year, you're in pretty good shape. So now, do I think that stops Edmonton from adding another defenseman? No, I don't. I think there's a it's probable at some point that you can never have enough defense.
yeah,
And do I think they'll look for maybe a little bit different dimension in the forwards? Well, that kind of depends on, we need to know what's going on with Evander Kane, because he brings a very different dimension if he's back in. But I think Darnell has had a real good bounce back here after having some, he had a tough series against Vancouver and kind of got a lot better as it went on after that.
yeah. Um, is it a top four right shot defenseman, or are you looking at seeing something? Because Elliot Freeman talked about a couple of weeks ago on the 32 Thoughts podcast that Ty Emberson's probably getting close to a contract extension. I think he's been really good for the organization as well. But do you think at some point they upgrade? And Troy Stetcher's been really good too. So at some point, like you are going to get something. But where would the area of concern really be? Is it again going back because Kulak plays as like a top four defenseman in the playoffs, and he's doing it right now in the regular season.
Yeah, well, you raise a valid point. Here's what I would say to that. First of all, the
Worry about
Broberg
the
and Holloway
chemistry in the locker
situation.
room. So that's my
Yeah,
concern.
yeah. The Broberg and Holloway situation was what it was.
Yeah,
Okay, and Stan Bowman inherited that. You look at how well Podkolzin has fit in with Leon, and then Emerson on the penalty kill with Ekholm in the first pairing. Like those are very cost-effective pickups for the Edmonton Oilers. It doesn't mean that at the end of the day, it's not frustrating to see a couple top 14 overall picks have success in another organization when you basically developed, both guys. But I bring that up. I think Emerson's a third pairing guy at even strength who's a good penalty killer. Both Emerson and Stetcher are playing under 15 minutes a game. In a perfect world, they find another defenseman that can play 17 or 18 minutes a game. Doesn't have to be a right shot because Kulak can play the right side, but there are other left shot defensemen that can play the right side. Keep that in mind. So it doesn't have to be a right shot. I don't even know if it needs to be a cycle stopper, shutdown type. It could be maybe another transition guy. Like if you're getting the puck up the ice and spending less time in your zone, are you better off doing that than having? So I'm not quite sure what exactly Stan Bowman and his staff are going to do, but I do have a little bit of confidence in just because of the scenario that he inherited. Because I didn't think, I'll be honest with you, Josh, I didn't think that Colson was the player that he is. I had no idea that he worked that hard, that he was as effective on, stripping pucks in the ozone, keeping plays alive in the ozone, the work that he does going back to the puck. Like he's a pretty effective player, and I think there's more offense that will come with him in time. Emerson had a pretty good idea what he was,
Yeah.
but Colson. So that's I think it's inevitable they probably add a D. I can't 100% guarantee it's going to be a right shot,
I
but
wonder.
it might be a guy that can play both sides.
Yeah. The name that keeps coming to mind for me, but it's see if Ottawa gets in is Artem Zub. I don't know if that's just came
Yeah.
back. I know he's only played 13 games this year, but um, yeah,
Well, they're trying to stay in the hunt too with Montreal. Like I think
that,
Montreal
that,
passed them in points
yeah, and
percent.
that
So
yeah, they did. Yeah, I saw that tweet.
I don't, I don't know who. Like again, I don't know if it's right shot or left shot. I don't know if it's a puck mover or a cycle stopper. I don't even know what the price point's going to be, and it could be a player on a team right now that is in the playoffs that might not be in the playoffs in 2 months.
Correct.
Like, but I think usually teams like this add. So I think we got to know that the Oilers are probably going to add. The
And
part of the wild card in this is when does Kane come back? Right? He told me 3 weeks ago he had a pretty unique surgery done, procedure done. He said at that time he hadn't begun skating. And the Oilers, I mean, the Oilers came into today's action with the fewest hits per 60 of any team in the league. Well, Evander Kane led them in hits last year amongst the forwards.
yeah,
So
are we on track with Kane? Like, is this what we thought it
I
was?
have no idea. I
I
don't know what on track
I
is.
don't even think he talked about where the timeline was, and
He
I don't
never did.
think Stan did either, right? So maybe that's not
Yeah,
even.
I don't know where we're at with him
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
I just know that he told me probably in the second or third week of December
yeah,
on the air that he had not started skating yet.
yeah.
So that led me to believe I mean, how would he be ready before February 15th?
Correct.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like I'm just kind of, but I don't know. I don't know. All I know is there's a player there. It's a great athlete there. And he's under contract for another year as well.
yeah.
So,
And he's
you know,
in the community,
there
and
are,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So, and we didn't see Evander at 100% last year in the rounds 3 and 4. And I mean, he didn't finish the series against Florida. And based on how well he played against Matthew Tkachuk when the Oilers played Calgary in 22,
probably have a
that,
Stanley Cup in Edmonton if he's in the
well,
line.
I don't know. I mean, the margins are so tight. I don't want to disrespect Florida. They're a well-coached team that played hard too. But, the Oilers were down, one full player and a couple other guys. Everybody was hurt. Like
Yeah,
the star players in the Oilers didn't even want to talk about the injuries as well. So that's all you need to know there.
yeah. Anything else you want to cover there, Stoff, on the Oilers? I think we did a good job.
Well, just Leon Draisaitl's. I mean, he's leading the league in goals. He's leading the league in even
14
strength
games,
goals, and he's leading
23.
the league in game-winning goals. He's having a good year.
Not surprising, and it's nice that a guy like that signs that contract and just kind of picks up where he left off. And
Yeah.
it's I know last couple of years Austin Matthews has kind of taken over that reign as the goal scorer, but don't
Well, Austin's still a heck of a player, but he's battled through some injuries this year.
don't
Marner's having a good year for the Leafs.
he is, yeah. We'll see if that carries over to a long playoff run, but we'll see how that goes for sure. It'll be
Tough division, right? That's part of their issue. In fairness to Toronto, and I know we have a little bit of fun back and forth,
yeah, oh yeah,
but the reality is Toronto's been in a division with Boston, Tampa, and Florida. That's not exactly,
no,
you know,
and
that's a
Colorado.
murderer's row. In soccer, that's called a pool of death, the World Cup.
It is, yeah. That's not it's not fun. Know all that well, all too well, but we'll see what happens there. It's we won't go. We always talk about Leafs. We won't go too long at least.
Well, all I will say is I think Brad has built.
He's built a team
I
you
think the
want.
Leafs. He's built the team you want.
Yeah,
That's what I would say. He's built a
and
bigger, heavier team to support the skill he's
one
got.
thing he's done is there's not a lot of noise about around Toronto. And I listen to Jeff O'Neill and Hayes and Noodles today, and there's
I
been a
can't
lot of
believe you listen to those guys every day, but
uh,
yes,
yeah, they are good guys. So
I know.
yeah, it was funny seeing Noodles the other day in Calgary. But yeah, it's good people. They're but yeah, I just listened to a quick segment of them before I got on the plane. But yeah, it was really interesting to see there. And obviously Devon Taves just scored, so Colorado's up 2-1 over Florida here. But I want to get a your thoughts on a coach that he's back in the NHL. He's coaching Detroit. They had that rough game against the Leafs, but they've looked pretty good since. And that's Todd McLellan in Detroit. And your thoughts on what Todd's been able to do? You know him very well in terms of what he can do from his time in Edmonton and his time in LA, even his time in San Jose too. And were you surprised to see a move? Because the Ilitch family has never fired a coach during season. And this is the first time they did it. What were your thoughts on that move and how that will shape this Iser plan and moving that forward?
I think they're going to be a team to watch in the second half of the year. Because I think that one of the things that Todd does is he can put in some structure and process, but I think he's better to have a little bit more experienced team.
Yeah,
Um, you know, I think he achieved a lot in LA. I think Rob Blake knows he achieved a lot, and they were probably ahead by about a year of where I thought they were going to be in LA. I think in Edmonton, I don't think he was the major factor as to why the team took a step back. He didn't trade away some of the skill that the Oilers had at that time. Um, he had a long run in San Jose, had a fair amount of success. Those people would argue, where was the playoff success? And I'd say, well, I guess that's fair. Again, the Kings won cups in 12 and 14. Those were, they played them in 14 and blew that 3-0 lead. Um, so I think that Todd is a coach that can get you in the playoffs. And so I think, and Detroit's a team that's transitioned enough of their younger players in with some quality veterans. I think they're going to push hard to make the playoffs this year. So I think he's a pretty good coach, and I think he's a really good guy. Um, so am I surprised he went into Detroit? No, and I totally think after their last two hires, with the inexperience they had as head coaches with the last two guys they hired, that this was the right guy for them to bring in.
yeah, yeah. It's been good to see him back, and just telling the guys just play at that one practice they had. I can get your final comments on the Vancouver Canucks. I know you got Elliot Friedman on tomorrow, and he tried to impose a 1 month suspension of not talking about the Canucks on his
Yeah,
podcast, and that only lasted 7 days. And then
yeah.
so obviously he'll be on your show tomorrow, sponsored by Abe's Door Service. His segment there.
Wow, nice job. You're cross-referencing my clients. Well done.
Exactly.
Our client, technically, it's not one of my clients, but it's our client with Chorus.
Yeah,
All right, well, let's get to Vancouver.
yeah,
First of all, Quinn Hughes, like he's their best player. He drives everything. Um, the injury to Roenick and then to Hughes really kind of undermines what they can do in the back end because they're down another transition defenseman. Like I think it used to be you needed two guys that can move it and four guys that can stop it. And now I think you need four guys that can move it and two guys that can stop it. So Vancouver has a slightly different team than they've had before, but Hughes is their best player. Pedersen said today in an interview with Ian McIntyre he needs to play better. That's good. Miller, he's certainly got a lot of supporters around the league. I don't know him well. Jack Michaels often talks to him, really likes him. He plays a hard game, and I got a lot of respect for how good he is. I don't know what I would do if I was in Vancouver's management position, other than one thing. I think they need to get another defenseman that can move the puck.
mm-hmm.
Like, because I think that if they get that, then because I mean, it kind of looks because they have Miller and see, here's the thing with Edmonton. Darnell Nurse, some people said, well, he always drove numbers because he got to play with Connor, and then the Oilers went out and got Ekholm and Bouchard, or got Ekholm. But at the time that Edmonton got Ekholm, they kind of pivoted away from loading Connor and Leon up, and they split them up on their respective lines. But Connor and Leon are so good. No disrespect to Miller and Pedersen, but Connor and Leon are so good. I think they're less reliant on D to transition the puck up because they can do some of that themselves. But the Oilers have Ekholm, who might be their best all-around defenseman, Bouchard, who's obviously got elite offensive instincts, and then Nurse and Kulak that can both transport the puck out of trouble.
Mhm.
And so I'm looking at the makeup of the Vancouver D. I'm going to all but guarantee you that the Canucks get another transition defenseman, either a guy that can let the puck do the work or transport it himself. I think that's inevitable to what's happened in Vancouver. I don't know what the Canucks are. I know there's trade whispers about maybe just stay the course. You know what I mean? See what happens if you get one more D that can really move the puck. Rick Tocchet's a good coach. Demko's had some injury issues, but they seem to have been able to. I mean, they made a really astute signing with Kevin Lankinen, and then you look at their management. They are in like they get ahead of the pack. Like last year, they made a bunch of trades. Um, I wouldn't write Vancouver off. I still think they can make some noise, but I do think I would guess by March the 1st, they would have added one more transition defenseman.
Yeah. Last question, stuff. We're at the halfway point of the NHL season, pretty much. Do you see how many Canadian teams do you see in the playoffs? Do you see 5, 7? Do you think they all kind of get in at this point, or where are you at?
Five.
5? Okay.
I'm going to go with 5.
Okay.
Oh, wait. 4.
4.
4 get in.
Okay.
I think Calgary is going to be hard pressed to make it. I think they've had a good year. I think they got a good thing going. I think it's going to be tough for them to make it. I respect the work their management's done and their coaching staff have done and their players have done. I think they're going to be hard pressed to make it. The Oilers are going to get in. Vancouver's going to get in.
Winnipeg, obviously, yeah.
Winnipeg's a slam dunk. I mean, they've had a terrific year, and the Maple Leafs are a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I think Detroit's going to get in ahead of Montreal and Ottawa.
Okay. All right. Let's see. This will be fun. Hey, and one thing, if you're Brad Treliving, do you let Austin Matthews play at the Four Nations, knowing what he's fighting right now? Or do you
I'd say it's up to Austin Matthews. I mean, it's a players' league.
Yeah.
Everybody that's working in it knows it.
Yep.
Even if you're in a periphery supporting relatively insignificant role like mine, we all know why we're here, right? So I think you got to let the player decide that. By the way, I'm really looking forward. I talked to Terry Lowen last week, August the 5th and 6th. I know that you've been donating money to the Central Alberta Children's Advocacy Center with Mark Jones and that group down there. Al Sims part of that as well. And I know that Cam Moon and myself are looking forward to getting a chance to do a couple of events around that in the first week of August towards the 5th and the 6th.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to continue to help and support and donate to that charity. Obviously I know Mark very well. Yeah, it was fun. It'll be a lot of fun to keep continuing that. So stop.
Yeah, it's for a great cause. They've done a wonderful job down there with that. And I know you had an event about a month ago. And when you're getting kudos from national based media guys, Josh, you must be doing something right. So you got those guys blocked, eh?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
All righty.
All the help of you, Staff, without the end.
All right.
As everyone knows. So you are the goat of goats, my friend. So
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Starting to look like one.
Yeah, exactly. You and me both on that. We're tag champs.
Old goat.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
All the best. Have a good road trip. Take care. And we'll chat.
Stay safe in Kitimat and call again, okay?
Will do, buddy. Thanks, Staff.
All right.